Hi guys. So over the last few weeks we've learned a lot about Natalia Seth. We've learned what inspires her, her artistic style, and also how she edits photos in Photoshop. We've also learned that she incorporates a lot of color into her work. So we learned about color schemes and how certain colors can create certain moods. So what we're going to do today, we're going to learn how to manipulate an image in Photoshop. And where I'm going to go over the Photoshop exercise checklist so you know what we're doing for today. But we're going to cover a few of the exercises, which is changing the color of the background and also the color of the ice cream image. Okay, so all of you are going to get a copy of the Photoshop exercise checklist, and I'm going to go ahead and read the top half of what we're going to be doing today. Using the image provided, you will use the checklist below to manipulate the photo. In Photoshop, create an 8 by 8 inch artboard. Each exercise you complete, save it as the name of the exercise, your last name, and first name. You'll save your work in the shared student folder. The first exercise we're going to complete is color. You're going to duplicate the ice cream 2 times for this exercise. You're going to change the color of the ice cream and the cone, change the color of the ice cream only using the selection tool, and then lastly change the background color. Once you open up Photoshop, you're going to create an 8-inch by 8-inch artboard. Make sure it says inches and not pixels, and change the width and the height to 8 by 8. And you're going to change your resolution to 300 and then hit create. After, you're going to go ahead and place the ice cream image that's in the class folder into your artboard. Once you have that done, you're going to use the selection tool and you're going to select the entire image, and then what you're going to do, you're going to hold down the Alt Option key and it's going to change that circle to a minus sign, and that's going to allow you to select the ice cream only. Once you've selected the ice cream image, you're going to hit Select in Mask, and here's where you can play around with the settings to refine your selection that you did with the selection tool. You can play around with smooth, feather, contrast, and shift the edge. And for the shifting of the edges depends on if you want the selection tool to go out further or to be retracted. And you can see the difference as I go to both extremes, all the way to the left and also all the way to the right. Once you have that done, you might need to go back and refine some of the edges again. I went back and clicked the Alt Option key, and I had needed to adjust where the selection tool was selected for the cone. And that's okay if you have to go back and play around with it some more. Okay, now that I'm happy with my selection, I'm going to select the eraser tool, make sure that I'm using the hard round brush, and that I make the eraser big enough to erase the background of the image. I get that cross sign, but you're just going to go ahead and click OK, and I'm going to go ahead and erase the background. And I needed to make the eraser a little bit bigger because there's a lot of background. I'm going over the edges a few times because you want to make sure that the edges are completely erased so that when you go to color the background, you won't see the original background color of the original image. Now that we have the ice cream image by itself, I'm going to use the moving tool to move it over to the left side, because I'm going to select the ice cream and hit Command C for copy and Command V, and that's going to duplicate the image as you can see here. To make it bigger, I'm going to use Command T and I hold down the Alt Option key so that I can make it bigger without distorting the image. And I'm going to do the same for the ice cream copy. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to lock one of my layers because I don't want to accidentally color the wrong ice cream layer. And I'm going to take the selection tool again, and I'm going to select the top of the ice cream because we're going to change the color of the ice cream swirl. Now you'll see that once I select my ice cream swirl, I go to select and mask, and I was happy with the masking that I had, so I didn't play around with the settings. But if you need to adjust yours, you certainly can. To change the color, you're going to go to Image, Adjustments, and then click Hue and Saturation. Hue and saturation is how you're going to change the color of your ice cream swirl. What color you want your ice cream to be is left up to you. I'm going to go with a blue color. For saturation, saturation is how brightly how bright you want the color to be, or if you want it to be a little bit more pale. I go back to adjustments and I click on levels. Here is where you can play around with the midtones, the shadows, and also the highlights. After this, I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and then I'm going to click Vibrance. And Vibrance is just another way of making the color a lot more or a lot brighter. And then of course, like I said, saturation is the same thing. You can play around with how bright you want the color to be, or if you want it to be more on the pale side. And all of these settings are your preference as to how bright or dark you want your color of your ice cream swirl to be. Now that we finished with the first ice cream layer, I'm going to click on the second one and unlock that layer, because with this one we're going to change the color of the ice cream swirl and the color of the cone. So you're going to click your selection tool and you're going to select the ice cream swirl only first, and we're going to change the color of this. And which color you want your ice cream swirl to be is of course your choice. And with this one, I did not go to select and mask. I jumped right into changing the color because I was happy with my selection. So you go to Image, Adjustments, and click Hue and Saturation, and you can play around with the color settings. I went with a purple color this time. And then I'm going back to Image, Adjustments, and I clicked on Vibrance so that I can change the brightness and the saturation of the ice cream swirl. So now what we're going to do, we're going to click the selection tool and we're going to select the cone this time. With the cone, because it has so many ridges, you might need to go in with the select and mask tool like I'm doing here and smooth out the edges and feather them a little bit. Now that the cone is selected, I'm going to change the color of it. So we're going to Image, Adjustments, and Hue and Saturation, and you can change the color of the cone to whatever color you'd like. I'm playing around with the saturation and the lightness a little bit because I didn't want the cone to be too bright and look fake, I guess you can say. So I brought down the saturation a little bit, and then I'm going into Image, Adjustments, and Levels, and here I'm playing around with the midtones and also the shadows. Next, I'm going back to Image, Adjustments, and then Vibrance, and I adjusted the vibrance and saturation a little bit. I didn't want it to be too bright. And after that, I went back to my layers panel on the right side, and you're going to select your background and you're going to unlock it so that you can start changing the color of the background. Then you'll go to your paint bucket tool and select the square that's on top so that you can select which color you'd like your background to be. What color you want your background to be is your choice. I originally picked yellow and then I didn't like the way that looked, so then I changed it to a pink color. Once you have your background color selected, you are all finished and you've completed your first set of Photoshop exercises. All right, so today you guys learned how to change the color of your background you change the color of the ice cream swirl and also the ice cream swirl and the ice cream cone. Don't forget to save your exercise by the name of the exercise, which should be color, and then underscore, your last name, underscore, and your first name, and you'll save it to the class folder. And we are done for the day, and I'll see you guys next time.